confession. The apology is, I'm sick as a dog. So if my voice isn't carrying, if I sound bad, that's what it's from. So cut me some slack. The confession is this, though. The confession is, I've never been to a normal meeting before. And what I like to do is come early and have a chance to talk to folks, see what folks are thinking about, where people are coming from. Because the second part of my confession is, I've actually never smoked pot before. Now don't run me out of here. Don't run me out of here. I've never smoked pot before, but that doesn't mean that I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about this issue. And I'm going to tell you a personal story. And it's a story that I haven't told folks anywhere but here. It will be my first public time. I have a brother, who smoked pot growing up. You know, it was no big deal. But what happened was he got into the next thing, and the next thing. And you know where the story's going. And the next thing happened to be heroin. And my brother lost his battle with heroin over Thanksgiving. And the funny thing is, I knew when I got the call. I knew. I was just waiting for the call. You know, I came up in the 90s, so the growings, all my, rock and roll heroes were on heroin, they all died, right? And I just don't see an easy way out once these kids get into heroin. And so I laugh when I hear people say that marijuana is a gateway drug. This is absolutely ludicrous. Marijuana is not a gateway drug. The drug dealers are the gateway to harder drugs. So a year ago, when Ian called me and said, Chris, I want you to think about how do we legalize marijuana in a responsible way, I was a little conflicted. Because at first, I didn't want, from a conscience standpoint, I didn't want to seem like I was advocating for what put my brother on this path. But that logic is entirely backwards. That logic is entirely backwards. So this is part of my confession. I'm confessing to you guys that my thinking on this issue was wrong from the start. And I think there are a lot of Ohioans whose thinking on this subject was wrong from the start. And so as I got into this issue, I came at it from a public policy standpoint. And I asked two questions that I thought I heard Jacob ask. It was really neat to hear Jacob talk because he and I have struggled through the same public policy issues, and I think that's a really interesting discussion to have. I asked the two questions: how do we put these drug dealers out of business so kids like Mike don't end up with heroin if they want to smoke pot? And how do we ensure that the marijuana is safe for public consumption? I wrote those two questions up on the whiteboard, and our team, everything that our team did, we did through the lens of those two questions. And so what was the result of these two questions? What came out of this? It's the amendment that we came out of. The first question we asked, it was a series of decision trees, kind of like playing chess. And the first question was, should Ohio be a medical-only state, or should Ohio be a medical and personal use state? And to me, that answer became very simple, because when we look at what's going on in other states, we realize that the medical-only states, in my view, I should preface this all by saying these are my views, right? When we look at the medical-only states, there have been problems with implementation, and there's been slippage out into the black market. So remember question one, that medical-only is not doing it. So we embraced very early on the notion of medical plus a robust personal use system. Okay, from there, it gets easy. The next question is, okay, do we want heavy regulation or do we want loose regulation? And I think this is probably where all of us will see things differently. But I'm happy to tell you my thoughts on it, and we can have the honest discussion. From our perspective, in answering those two questions, put the drug dealers out of business, make sure that products are safe for consumption. Our view was, let's have tight regulation on this. Let's have regulation that approximates what happens at the PUCO, the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio. Language that approximates the Liquor Commission. And so we worked from that framework. Then the next question we had to ask ourselves was, if we don't want slippage into the black market, we need to take the stream of commerce, break it into its constituent parts, and then put it back together to figure out how the regulatory regime will work. So at the top of the stream of commerce is the grow. I don't need to tell you guys this. At the top of the stream of commerce, you have the growth. And I know one of our big discussion items tonight, I assume, I guess, is going to be this issue of personal growth versus grow in tightly regulated facilities. Let me tell you how we dealt with the issue. And it has a direct correlation back to what they did in the Prohibition era. When Prohibition ended in the 30s, Volstead Act, when Prohibition ended, the regulations on bringing alcohol back out into the public were very tight. There was no home brewing. There was no make your own wine. They were trying to break up the black market. It was about regulating and about going after the folks that were bootlegging. So for 80 or 90 years, 80 years, in Ohio, there was no equivalent of personal grow, home grow. Now, I didn't want to weigh in on that debate one way or the other, except to say we recognize that putting the drug dealers out of business is going to be a tough enough task. So what we have done with this amendment is not dealt with personal growth. Now, that is not to say that we have prohibited personal growth. There's a big difference. There's a big difference in the nuance. If we decide at any point that personal grow as a state is what we want to do, nothing in Responsible Ohio's amendment will prevent us from going right downtown and saying, did I get my direction right? Right downtown and saying, we want personal grow, pass it, legislature. Or there's nothing that prevents us from going back and putting a ballot initiative out there that says personal grow's time has come. We want personal growth. What our amendment does not do, it does not address it. One way or the other. That's a fight for someone else to have, and we're happy to have it with them. But it's not our fight. Once you buy into the premise that tight regulation must occur at the raw material level, then you ask yourself the question, okay, how should we deal with the supply of the raw materials? There's two different ways. I'm sorry. There's two different ways. You can have relatively few facilities within which to grow the raw materials, or you can have hundreds or many facilities. So very strategically, we said we're going to have relatively few facilities, and we did this because of the regulatory scheme. We recognize that there will be enforcement from a commission that I haven't talked about, and the commission's resources are better used when targeting a relative few number of raw materials producers than a gigantic number of raw materials producers. Okay? After that, after the raw materials are packaged and tested for safety, my question number 2, out they go. And anybody who wants to get involved in the business can get involved in the business. And what do I mean by that? If you have an idea and you're an entrepreneur and you want to bake brownies or tinctures or oils or other edibles, all you need is a great idea and a license from the commission. You're in business. If you want to be a retail outlet and you want to sell products, you're not prohibited from buying the products from any of the raw materials producers or buying any products from any of the processing facilities. All you need is a license and a great idea, and you can be a retailer. Now, we haven't talked about patients. There's a very robust patient system along the lines of what Jared was talking about. But there are nonprofit medical dispensaries that are part of this system. So let's say you're a nurse and you feel passionate about patient advocacy and you want to open up a not-for-profit medical marijuana dispensary to serve patients. You can do that. Anywhere up and down this stream of commerce, if you've got a great idea and you've got a license from the commission, you can be part of that. Now, there's a whole bunch of nuance that I could get into, but my time is short, and I think Ian would like to say a few words about the politics.
3 minutes is what I've got. I'm Ian James. I'm the executive director of Responsible Ohio, and unlike Chris, I have smoked marijuana. I went to Ohio University. I actually grew up with Donnie down in Athens. And the reality is, I'm a political consultant. I've been doing this for 30 plus years. All of what we talked about tonight are great ideas. They're fantastic. Thank everybody for working on advocacy for patients' rights, for legalization, reform marijuana. But the reality is, the sad reality is, unless we get a majority vote of the people in Ohio, not Oregon, not Washington State, not Colorado, not in some pretty blue state, in Ohio, where it's purple. It's not a red state, it's not a blue state. Obama's won it twice. Kasich won it twice. Where's Bob? Bob knows, this is libertarian, this is a purple state. You cannot win in Ohio if you're too far to the left, and you cannot win if you're too far to the right. That's the reality. So we've taken a very responsible and common sense approach to this. It may not be exactly what everybody wants. I personally want single payer health care, but I am damn sure not going to throw Obamacare out to get it. Okay? I'm going to be realistic, and I'm going to say to myself, what do Ohio voters want? What will they support? And what they will not support, because they're very concerned, is home grow right now. They're looking at it and they are freaked out about it. Don't want to believe it? You need to do some polling, because we have been doing polling since September. We brought the Obama National Data Team on to help us with the data dive on this, so we know exactly where Ohio voters are. We're not sending invoices off. I got 1 minute. We're actually paying them right now, because we've raised $20 million plus for this campaign. That's what it takes in Ohio. Got a great idea? Fantastic. Run with it. God bless you. But if you want to win in this state, you need to organize, you need to raise money, you need to get your asses out there and work for it like you have been, but you got to get the rest of, not everybody in this room, we got to get the rest of the people in Ohio, the middle of the road Ohioans, to be in support of something. And they're not going to be in support of something too far out there. Middle of the road wins. I'll answer any questions for... I'm sorry?
Yeah, we'll be a question and answer.
Oh!